Robert Mueller brings indictments against 12 Russians who are part of the Putin regime. Rod Rosenstein gives a press conference. He makes it abundantly clear not a single American has been indicted, that these Russians were trying to interfere with our election. It's all over the news. It's Friday. They played it on Friday. They can't get their hands on a single one of these Russians. Not one of these Russians is going to do prison time. Not one. And the media run with this like it's some monumental event. It's a non-event. This should have been handled through a counterintelligence investigation. That's why these matters are not criminal matters. Because you can't get your hands on the defendant. Now we have defendants who are in Russia, who work for Putin or used to work for Putin. What are we supposed to do about it? Seriously, what are we supposed to do about it? And then I see some media types say, lay off Mueller. He's doing his job. See how great he is, blah, blah, blah. Lay off Mueller. He's doing his job. Is there a single public official, ladies and gentlemen, we should lay off if we don't think they're doing their job? Do you understand what I mean about the media? NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. Have they ever taken a critical look at Robert Mueller? Have they ever taken a critical look at any of the people on his team? Even certain people on Fox, have they ever taken a critical look at Robert Mueller? Or members of his team? No, they haven't. And yet he's an enormously powerful man who, if he wants, can seek to bring down a president. But they're not going to bring him down. Do you want to know why? They're not even going to question Mueller. Now, why do you think they're not going to question Mueller? Yes, because of their ideologies. But what else? Because he and his people are sources. That's why. So they don't touch them. They don't touch them. And they're not going to. There's a present-day example. So, if the media are going to operate as if they are focusing towards one base of one party or another base of another party, they should reveal themselves. That's all. They should reveal them. But they won't. Because they get to have it both ways. By the way, very quickly, as a footnote to the point about the indictment of 12 of Putin's apparatchiks over there in Russia who never have any intention of setting foot in the United States and will never see the inside of a courtroom in the United States. Much drama and bravado. I agree that if somebody is trying to interfere in an election in a democratic society, they should be punished. And I agree, particularly if we can get our hands on them, they should be indicted. And so my question to Mr. Mueller is there a reason why you haven't indicted Barack Obama for interfering with the election in Israel? The evidence is all over the country. It's all over the place. I'll pull it together and email it to you. You don't even have to hire another Democrat prosecutor. Is there a reason why Mr. Rosenstein in his press conference today didn't say that we will also be looking at Barack Obama, not because he interfered, not because of the Russian interference in our election, but because of his interference in the Israeli election? I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we ought to have standards here. I don't believe the Russians should have interfered in our election. I don't believe Obama should have interfered in our election, which he did through his surrogates at the FBI and so forth. But he also interfered in the election in Israel because he sought to defeat the prime minister who was running for re-election, Benjamin Netanyahu. Is there a reason why that moral standard doesn't apply to Barack Obama? Is there a reason why he hasn't been indicted? And we can get our hands on him, by the way. Just to circle back on my footnote from the first hour, I watched this Rosenstein up there telling a press conference about these 12 Russians they indicted. Well, they might as well indict 12 Norwegians or 12 Zimbabweans or I don't know. Whomever they want, because they're never going to see, they're never going to be in this country. And then you see, Mueller's really doing his job. He's really getting to the bottom of it. Getting to the bottom of what? I think we knew the Russians were interfering in our election. Mueller was the former director of the FBI. He was the director of the FBI before Comey. And nobody ever asked, what the hell did the guy do as FBI director when the Russians were trying to interfere with our election? Didn't just start in the 2016 election. What did he do? I'm quite serious. They hold him up like he's this magnificent figure. He's a knucklehead. Nothing magnificent about the guy. Jeffrey, Denver, Colorado, on the Mark Levin app. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Mark, for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I spent some time today reading through the Mueller indictment of the Russians, and I was struck by paragraph 37 where it said, starting in or around June 16th and through the election, they released emails stolen from individuals affiliated with the Clinton campaign. And then there was another comment that said, the conspirators also released documents they had stolen in other spearfishing operations, including those they had collected in 2015 that collected emails from individuals affiliated with the Republican Party. I have heard nothing about leaked emails or stolen emails from the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. Very interesting. All right, Jeffrey, I appreciate your point. Let me tell you something we just figured out here. This indictment of the 12 Russians, the essential facts that are in the indictment were in the House Intelligence Committee's final report on Russian involvement in our campaign. I'm going to prove it to you. I just pulled up the summary findings of the House Intelligence Committee report. Remember, they trashed Nunes and trashed the Republicans, and you're not to take it seriously, and on and on and on. Now, a lot of the report is redacted because the Justice Department and FBI didn't want that information public. Some of it, I surmise, is now in the indictment. The point being that Nunes and that committee that he runs were on top of this stuff and dismissed and attacked for it. Let me read you some of the summary findings in the table of findings. I pulled up the report here. Chapter 1, Russia campaigns in Europe. Chapter 2, Russia attacks the United States. So let's look at Chapter 2, just the headings. Finding number 7, Russia conducted cyber attacks on U.S. political institutions in 2015 and 2016. And, of course, I'm reading the headline summaries. They have all the details provided in the report. Finding number 8, Russian state actors, like generals and intelligence officials and third-party intermediaries, were responsible for the dissemination of documents and communications stolen from U.S. political organizations. Isn't that what the indictment says? Finding number 9, the Russian government used RT, Russia TV, to advance its malign influence campaign during the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Isn't that Larry King's employer? I think it is. Finding number 10, Russian intelligence leveraged social media in an attempt to sow social discord and to undermine the U.S. electoral process. So number 1, just as a superficial surface matter, they point out, yes, Russia conducted cyber attacks against our political institutions. That would include the DNC and the GOP from 2015 to 2016. And I might add, that's during the time the Obama administration was in charge of protecting the election. Russia state actors, and their intermediaries were responsible for the dissemination of documents and communications stolen from U.S. political organizations. The emails, as an example. Number 9, the Russian government used their TV network to advance their influence campaign. Number 10, Russia intelligence leveraged social media in an attempt to sow social discord and to undermine the U.S. electoral process. What I'm saying here is the essential facts of what the Russians did, as stated in this indictment, have been already presented. The essential facts by the House Intelligence Committee Republicans under Chairman Devin Nunes. Now, have you heard a single so-called news organization report that? No. You haven't heard CNN because CNN hates Nunes and hates that committee. They're used to getting leaks from the Democrats. You haven't heard it on MSNBC? Why? Because you don't watch MSNBC, let's be honest, so we don't know what the hell's going on over there. But the rest of the media, well, this won't be in the New York Slimes or the Washington Compost. But the essential, the fundamentals, the essential facts that are in the indictment are already in this report. In Chapter 2. Now, I'm looking at page 14 of a 253-page report. And I haven't had time to get into the actual chapter with all the, with all the details, because I'm on the air. But I would encourage you to go ahead and pull it up. The full Russia investigation report, it's on a PDF. You can get it on the internet. Let me see. I'm trying to remember when it came out. I'm looking very quickly. I'm doing my research while I'm on the radio, which means just today I'm doing more research than most people who write books and pretend that they have. All right. It's the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence report on Russian active measures, March 22, 2018. This is what? 3.5 months ago. And we were told to ignore it. Now, there's certain redactions in here as compelled by the Department of Justice and the FBI, among others, and some of our intelligence agencies. But I just want you to be aware of this. Everybody's slobbering all over. Oh, my God, leave Mueller alone. Look, he's done great work. He indicted 12 Russians. Okay, and then what? Just whatever. Stop calling it a witch hunt. I think that was what the great late Senator Mark Warner said. Stop calling it a witch hunt. Okay, Mark, sit down and shut up. But anyway, I'm saying the House Intelligence Committee already found the essential facts here. I mean, that's a big deal. By the way, what happened to the Senate Intelligence Committee? Does it even exist? Where are those people? Have they issued anything? They'll get around to it? What? Well, I think that's a big deal. The House Intelligence Committee came up with most of this stuff already. Right, Rod Rosenstein? No, Rod Rosenstein. It's not Rosenstein. It's Rosenstein. Frankenstein. It's Rosenstein. By the way, during the break, I was thinking, because there was a piece up on the TV about voting on whether or not to abolish ICE. And the 3 Democrat sponsors now are concerned because Paul Ryan, the speaker, has decided, okay, let's vote on it. Let's get everybody on record. And now they say, well, I don't know if I'm going to vote for it. I don't know. Here's my take. Then vote on abolishing the IRS right afterwards. What do you think about that, Mr. Speaker? Can you support that? Then I got to thinking further. The Democrat Party, abolish ICE, the second biggest law enforcement arm of the federal government that is intended to protect you and me and our communities. They eviscerate the United States military when they control the executive branch and undermine it. They've been undermining local law enforcement. You realize the Democrat Party's done far more damage to this country than the Russians? And I despise Vladimir Putin. I despise that government. I always have. I'm not one of these code pink Republicans. But the Democrat Party is doing more damage to this country, just as Mr. Comey, Mr. Stroke, Ms. Page, McCabe, the rest of those clowns, Mr. What's the jerk on TV? Brennan, Clapper. And every time I hear Clapper, I do the expecting the lamp to turn off or turn on. But anyway, those people, their interference in our election, none of them. Nobody's getting indicted around here. Only the Russians. Although we're going to indict them way over there. And then I just want to reiterate what I said earlier in the show. Mr. Rosenstein, Mr. Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Mueller, if that is your name, I have a question for you. If you believe meddling in elections is a crime, then it is. If you believe meddling in elections to affect the outcome of election is a notorious act, that there needs to be punishment for it, then I will ask you yet again, why have you not charged Barack Obama for meddling in the Israeli election? For committing acts of espionage against members of Congress, Jewish organizations, the ambassador from Israel to the United States. Clandestine activities against the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm being quite serious. They set up this phony NGO, non-government organization. They washed and laundered money from the State Department through it for the purpose of influencing the outcome of the election in Israel. So why hasn't anybody been indicted for that? Why hasn't Barack Obama been indicted for that? Instead, you're indicting Russians? Fine, indict 1,000. Indict all the Russians you want. And by the way, another question. That's going to be raised by Scott from Rancho Mirage, California, on the Mark Levin app. Scott, what was your point? It's relevant here.
2 points, Mark. First, why doesn't Trump take the high road and tell Mueller and Rosenstein to file a complaint against Russia and Putin in the International Court of Justice?
Well, Trump doesn't tell people who to indict, but I like the rest of your point is, we know that Putin was behind this. His generals, his intelligence officers, the hackers, they have a whole building filled with these people who have as their mission to commit acts of cyber warfare. I think the legitimate part of your question is, why didn't they indict Vladimir Putin?
Yes, that was a question. That was a question I had.
Yes. What's your next point, sir?
If Putin was behind it, why not indict him?
You're in Rancho Mirage?
I am.
You must be surrounded by all kinds of libs. Anyway, what's your next point?
I know that you have pointed out repeatedly that the Office of Legal Counsel has rendered a couple of opinions that indicate that an employee or an official...
Now, they indicate that the position of the United States Department of Justice is that you cannot indict a sitting president. Go ahead.
Okay, well, the Office of Legal Counsel also gave an opinion that Trump's travel ban was legal. And Sally Yates, as I understand it, was the first acting attorney general or attorney general who refused to comply or follow.
She was the acting attorney general. She had been a holdover from Obama. She had been the deputy attorney general because the Democrats held up the Sessions confirmation. And you're saying, yes, she blew it off. Yes, she did. And she was fired.
And I watched Rosenstein when he was asked before Congress about those opinions, and he smirked. And I'm wondering if...
Are you sure he smirked? Because I think that's a permanent facial condition.
Okay, well, I question whether they have an intent not to comply with it.
Well, they're going to have a tough time doing that because the president's lawyers aren't stupid. If the issue is teed up, they'll go right into federal court and argue, among other things, this is the official Department of Justice position. They can't just change it because we have a new president or change it after the fact. So I think the president's lawyers would have a terrific argument.
All right. Well, Mark, those are my 2 comments, and thanks for talking to me.
Scott, thank you, buddy. Take care. Jimmy, Brooklyn, New York, the great WABC. Go.
The communist agitators and organizers closed down U.S. mines, railroads, and factories between 1919 and 1921. And then the agitators sent a letter to Lenin in Russia requesting he send professional revolutionaries. Lenin did. Now, I got this all from the communist press. Lenin did. And when these foreign communist agents were rounded up and sent back to Russia, Lenin welcomed them home. And by the way, it was a young J. Edgar Hoover involved in a lot of these roundups. And now I'm hearing conservatives denounce J. Edgar Hoover, saying that Comey did as much damage to the FBI as J. Edgar Hoover. The Soviets have been active in this country forever. The so-called peace movement, the anti-nuke movement.
Let's slow down. So one of the things you're saying, Jimmy, is that the Russians, the left, they've had a many decades-long campaign to try and destroy J. Edgar Hoover's reputation. Is that what you're saying?
Right. And J. Edgar Hoover has been vindicated. Now, everybody could make mistakes, but anybody who does research, even on Joe McCarthy, some of the latest stuff that came out of the Soviet Union or some of the Venona intercepts that were deciphered,
right.
It was actually worse than Joe McCarthy was claiming. Every part of our government had enemy agents in it. They were promoting each other. They were giving references to support each other throughout the government. And this was going on for decades.
And Jimmy, we've learned, and our dear friend Professor Kengor has written about this multiple occasions, we learned that the line of the Senate Chappaquiddick Ted Kennedy, the Cape Cod Orca. Ted Kennedy, literally, directly, tried to influence the re-election effort of Ronald Reagan by working with the Soviets in the Kremlin.
The tour of the country with Gorbachev to denounce the Reagan defense buildup. Mm-hmm. The meddling is there, and the ones who've been colluding for decades.
By the way, did the Democrats, they even want to hear about that?
No, they don't. They've been colluding with the Soviets for decades.
For half a century at least.
Exactly. And Frank Marshall Davis, Obama's mentor,
yes,
was a very important communist agent. In fact, he was so important that he was on a special list to be arrested immediately if we ever had...
He does, but it doesn't matter. He's not Stormy Daniels. You understand?
Yeah, that's true. So
right.
If you want anybody who was colluding with the Soviets, you'd look at a guy like Obama. I mean, he was friends with a communist terrorist. How many people do you know that could be friends with a communist terrorist and nobody makes an issue of it?
No, in fact, when you bring up Bill Ayers and so forth, they told you to be quiet.
Exactly. President Roosevelt was surrounded by people with Soviet connections.
Well, we know about Alger Hiss, don't we?
Alger Hiss, Hopkins. Then it was the
you're not allowed to bring up Alger Hiss. Why is that?
Well, liberals defend communists for some reason. I mean, you could theoretically be a liberal and not a communist, but somehow they defend them. I guess people on the left stick together or something.
All right, Jimmy. I appreciate your call very much. You take care of yourself. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.